Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time this evening to join the Los Angeles County Housing Element Update Big Ideas Workshop. This workshop will provide an overview of the Department of Regional Planning's update to the housing element of the general plan. The County of Los Angeles Department of Regional Planning performs all land use planning functions for the unincorporated communities of Los Angeles County. More than 65% of the county is unincorporated and encompasses over 100 communities, depending how you define them. Here is the agenda for this evening's workshop. To begin, I will go over a few housekeeping items for this virtual workshop. I will explain the purpose of this workshop and provide an overview of the housing needs in our state and county. I will then introduce the housing element and present its big ideas. The workshop will conclude with a live question and answer period with LA County staff. This workshop will be approximately 60 minutes. The workshop will include a 30-minute presentation followed by a 30-minute question and answer period. All participants are automatically muted at the start of the presentation. Participants will be able to unmute during the question and answer period at the end of the presentation. You may use the raise hand feature or chat box to request to speak. Please use the chat box feature to submit any questions or comments in writing. The purpose of this workshop is to provide an overview of the process for the Housing Element 2021 through 2029 draft currently out for public review and share the overarching big ideas of the housing element. This workshop is also an opportunity to talk about why we're facing a housing affordability crisis in the state and county and what the housing element can do about it. You may have heard there's a housing problem in California. Over 150,000 Californians sleep without shelter each night. 7.1 million more Californians live in poverty when housing costs are taken into account. That is approximately 1/6 of the state's population. 56% of these low-income Californians see more than half of their paycheck go to rent. Housing you can afford is typically defined as taking less than 30% of the household income. In the late 1960s, the average home in Los Angeles cost about the average household income. Now, the average house costs more than 3 times what the average household makes. The median statewide price of a single-family home was $700,000 in 2020. For the price of one average home in California, you can now buy 2 homes in Phoenix. Today, the LA region has the fewest homes per capita of any metro area in the country, and the second lowest rental vacancy rate of any major metropolis. More than half of all renters in unincorporated areas of Los Angeles County pay more than 30% of their income in rent. That means they may not have enough money left over for other necessities like food, transportation, or healthcare costs. Approximately 74% of large family households in the county experienced a housing problem such as cost burden or overcrowding. A large family household has 5 people or more. Over 20% of all households in Los Angeles County are a large family household. Every day you see people camped out on the side of the street, under freeways, and in their cars. Rents are higher than ever before, and home prices are rising faster than incomes, making it hard for people to retire, stay in the same neighborhood they grew up in, be near their jobs, and stay in Los Angeles County. The housing element is one tool to help plan for ways to address the housing crisis in Los Angeles. The housing element is a set of goals, policies, and actions that address the housing needs of all current and anticipated residents at all income levels. Housing elements updates are required by the state and have been since 1969. Every local government must accommodate its fair share of housing every 8 years. The next cycle is 2021 through 2029. There are 5 phases in the housing element process. Phase 1 began in May 2020. The county is currently in Phase 3. In this current phase, the draft housing element is out for public review, and the project team is hosting a series of virtual workshops, including this event. There will also be future opportunities to comment on the housing element in Phase 4 at the Regional Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors meetings. The foundation of the housing element is the Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or RHNA, in which the state estimates each region's housing needs for the upcoming 8 years. The RHNA for the unincorporated areas for 2021 through 2029 is approximately 90,000 homes. This is the largest number the county has ever had to plan for. However, it should be noted that neither property owners nor the county are required to build these housing units. The housing element process identifies barriers to housing production, housing needs, and appropriate sites for housing to develop a list of goals, programs, and actions to meet the region's housing needs. Although the county doesn't build the housing units planned for in the housing element, they do make the rules and pay for some of it. The government doesn't really build housing right now, though they used to. However, the government, in this case Los Angeles County, does set the rules for how and where housing can be built, and this affects how much housing gets built and what kind. These rules can help set the framework for fair, livable, and affordable places to live, or they can do the opposite. Racial housing covenants used to let neighborhoods exclude people based on race. When these were made illegal, single-family zoning became a popular way to achieve the same goals. R1, single-family zoning, lets prices discriminate where laws could not. If you make sure that only people who can afford large houses live in your neighborhood, you make sure that your neighborhood is exclusive. As a result of this zoning practice, most of today's housing stock across the county is single-family homes. In unincorporated LA County, about 76% of today's housing stock is single-family homes. Yet our communities need a wide range of housing types, such as duplexes, triplexes, townhouses, and apartments to meet the needs of different household types and incomes. There are a number of housing needs that are addressed in the housing element update, including overcrowding, a changing population, affordability, and the need to diversify housing options so that, for example, young people can get on the property ladder in a starter home and retirees can afford to downsize and stay in the same neighborhood. The housing element also paves the way for local governments to encourage developers to build a range of housing choices other than single-family homes simply by making it possible to do so. To get denser housing, you don't have to build a skyscraper. Even a two-family building is twice as much housing as a single-family home. The housing element's goals, programs, and actions can be categorized into 4 overarching big ideas. The first big idea is to build more housing. The second big idea is to help keep existing housing affordable and safe. The third big idea is to enhance neighborhoods and access to opportunity. And the fourth big idea is to encourage a variety of housing types. To help illustrate the housing element's big ideas, let me introduce you to our fictional neighbors: Nick, Susan and Lee, Maria, Tommy and Rod, Gia and Alex, and Jade. Through their stories, we will explore what housing in unincorporated LA County could look like in the year 2030. Big idea 1 is to build more housing. Now imagine the following scenario. Nick is a line cook at one of the nearby restaurants. He has been unable to find affordable housing in his community and has been living out of his car. The county owns a surface parking lot down the street from 2 new condo buildings and a handful of local restaurants. In 2030, with better housing policy in place, the county issued an RFP to ground lease the parking lot to a nonprofit developer who specializes in affordable housing. They build a 49-unit apartment building that will serve a mix of formerly homeless individuals and low-income families. Based on his income and living situation, he finds out that he qualifies to live in the building and is thrilled. In 2030, with no new ideas or housing policy in place, the county still maintains the parking lot because it is seldom used, a safe parking program was created, and Nick is glad to have a safer place to park his car at night, even if he has to be out early each morning. One day, his car won't start, and he won't have the cash for repairs for another week. He watches as his car is towed from the lot and impounded. Nick loses his place to stay, his clothes, and the few possessions he had in his car. After a couple of weeks of living on the street, Nick has a tough time being presentable at work and loses his job. Here is another fictional scenario to help illustrate big idea number 1. Maria is a single mother of 3 young children who works as a residential care assistant at a senior assisted living facility. Maria and her children have been living in a 1-bedroom apartment. She is worried that she will not be able to afford the rent if rent continues to increase and wants to stay in her neighborhood so that her children can continue to attend the same school. A vacant commercial building was recently rezoned for residential use in her neighborhood. In 2030, with better housing policies in place, a real estate developer rehabs the office building into a project that includes ground floor retail for small shops with 70 apartments above. The site is subject to the county's inclusionary housing ordinance, which means that the developer must rent some of the units at below market rate rents. He decides to set aside 15% of the units as affordable. He will rent 11 apartments to households who earn between 30 and 50% of the area median income, or AMI. A family of 4 who make less than $59,100 per year will qualify. Based on Maria's income, she qualifies for a 3-bedroom apartment in the new affordable housing development. Without housing policies in place, in 2030, a developer builds a mixed-use project with shops on the ground floor and apartments below. He capitalizes on the high home prices in the area and sets rents to $2,500 a month for a 1-bedroom unit. All of the incoming tenants earn upwards of $90,000 a year to afford their rent. 80% of the tenants that move in come from outside the community. Maria's landlord raises her rent at the end of the year and she can't afford it. The closest apartment she can afford is 50 miles from her job, and her children have to switch schools in the middle of the year. Big idea number 2 is to help keep existing housing affordable and safe. Susan and Lee's fictional story will help illustrate what big idea number 2 means for their imaginary neighborhood. Susan and Lee have lived in their neighborhood for over 25 years. Looking to retire in the next 5 to 10 years, they know that money will be tight. They want to stay in their community and keep their home to have room to host their children and grandchildren for visits and holidays. Susan and Lee currently live in a 3-bedroom single-family home on a 5,000 square foot lot a mile from a main job center. Their home was built in the 1970s. In 2030, with better housing policies in place, Susan and Lee have saved up enough to build a small 1-bedroom ADU in their backyard for a steady rental income. They now rent the ADU to Jade, a recent college graduate who works as an elementary school teacher. With no new housing ideas in 2030, Susan and Lee are unable to afford their expenses. The newly retired couple are forced to sell their home. Susan and Lee have to move 2 hours east to purchase a small condo in an unfamiliar city, leaving their friends and family. Meanwhile, Jade cannot afford rental housing and decides to apply for a teaching job out of state. Big idea 3 is to enhance neighborhoods and access to opportunity. Imagine the following scenario. Tommy and Rod are both retired and turning 80 this year. They are looking to move out of their two-story home in the suburbs to be walking distance to the grocery store and health services. In their neighborhood, there's currently a vacant lot right off Main Street, close to shops and amenities. In 2030, with better housing policies in place, an affordable housing developer recently completed a new senior apartment complex right off Main Street, close to shops and amenities. The developer includes some in-house services for its senior tenants. Tommy and Rod are excited to know that they will be able to stay in their community and easily access necessary amenities like a pharmacy and grocery store. With no new ideas in place in 2030, after a thorough search, they find there is not enough affordable housing for seniors and are forced to move further from amenities in order to downsize. The vacant lot gets developed with a single-family home owned by an out-of-state developer who advertises it for rent for more than anyone local can afford. Big idea number 4 is to encourage a variety of housing types. Gia and Alex will share their fictional story to help bring big idea number 4 to life. Gia and Alex got married last year and want to move back to Gia's old neighborhood to start a family. Even with their stable careers, they are unable to afford a home in the neighborhood because there aren't many houses available, and the median home price has grown to over $600,000. There is currently a one-bedroom house on a major street. The home has been vacant for more than 20 years and is rumored to be held as a tax write-off for the owner who lives in Beverly Hills. With better housing policy in place in 2030, the county has rezoned some areas to allow for 2, 3, and 4 family housing. A local developer purchases a dilapidated single-family home and develops the property into 4 compact homes. Because he was able to build the 4 homes on a lot, the developer is able to sell each home for significantly less than the median home price. Gia and Alex are able to utilize the county's home ownership program for the first-time home buyers to buy one of the compact homes for $400,000. The compact homes are well designed and great additions to the neighborhood. With no new ideas or housing policies in place in 2030, the house is still vacant and is broken into at least twice a year. The high home prices prevent them from living close to Gia's family. Gia and Alex are worried that they will not be able to find a home in a good school district for their children, so they move out of state. On behalf of the fictional neighborhood, I hope you enjoyed listening to the personal stories of how housing policies create now will help LA County residents for years to come. For more information on this project, email housing@planning.lacounty.gov or visit the project webpage at planning.lacounty.gov/housing.